Hi guys, this is the Audiofool, and for today, we're going to review the Hegel H120 integrated amplifier. What I like the most about the Hegel H120 is the sound signature. It's mostly neutral but not too sterile and still sounds engaging. The bass is just right, not too loud but with a lot of textures and control. The treble is super clear, refined, and didn't come off as fatiguing to my ears. The mids are not too rich, not too lean, not too forward, not too recessed. Still good for analytical listening, but has enough character to make it enjoyable. And it's also an all-in-one. It has a built-in streamer with a similarly clean-sounding DAC, and compared to the competitors in its price class, this could have been my top choice. What I don't like about the Hegel H120 is that it doesn't have Wi-Fi. I'm pretty sure a Wi-Fi chip or Wi-Fi dongle wouldn't add too much to the cost, yet it adds so much to the convenience. And at $3,000, I think it's a no-brainer. Speaking about costs, it's pretty much what I hate the most about the Hegel H120. Looks doesn't have the display of the Naim Atom? Okay, fine. This sounds so much better. No phono? Okay, I'll buy a turntable with a built-in phono. Only 75 watts? Well, there are other amps which are more expensive yet does less power. But you know what? Little Bro H95 is $1,000 cheaper and does 60 watts. Now, 15 watts might sound a lot, but it's practically just 1 dB louder. And they pretty much sound the same. It just doesn't come in white and doesn't have balanced inputs. And honestly, I think most people will be fine with 60 watts, and the $1,000 added to your speaker budget is a big deal, so I've been audiobold. Would have been the best value all-in-one, if not for Little Bro. If you want to know more details about the comparison, please keep on watching. Here we have the Hegel H120. Doesn't seem too special and has that minimalistic aesthetic with an input knob on the left and the volume on the right. Basic display in the center and a decent headphone jack near the volume. There's a standby toggle switch at the bottom center, but it switches on automatically if you use the streamer. Lots of slots up top to help dissipate the heat and works quite well as it barely gets warm even after listening all day. At the back, you have a line output, 2 analog inputs, 1 balanced, and then the binding post. Then digital inputs and Ethernet, which is your only way of connecting this to your network as it doesn't have Wi-Fi. First, we compare to the Schiit Aegir using the KEF LS50 and Yggdrasil. In my Hegel H190 review, I praised it for having wonderful bass control and being absolutely clean. The H120 has the same signature, and I prefer it in 2 out of 5 tracks. Bass is in line and doesn't go all over the place. It doesn't have the richest sound though, and the Aegir's more relaxed sound appealed to me. So for electronica, the H120 and everything else to the Aegir. The H120 has more defined bass compared to the Aegir and easily heard and felt. The Aegir produces it slightly louder, which gave it an advantage in rock tracks. Mids are also richer and have more textures, which sometimes makes me think if the Hegel cleans up more than it should. Vocals are also more forward. Treble on the Hegel, on the other hand, is more resolving and has a hair more clarity, but despite this, it doesn't come off too sharp or bright and is well balanced from top to bottom. The Aegir does have a slightly deeper soundstage, and combined with airier, longer decaying notes, makes it feel more holographic and separated. The Hegel has a blacker background though. The H120 is the more neutral, cleaner sounding amp, but still has enough character to make it an enjoyable amp for me. I do prioritize mid-range, which is why I chose the Aegir in some of my test tracks, but it's not a significant difference and I could easily live with the Hegels. The Hegels can also do 75 watts, which should make it better for less efficient speakers and larger rooms, so it's the clean and efficient choice. I think everyone should hear a Hegel and judge for themselves because I definitely like the sound and should be one of the top considerations if you have the budget. Next, we compare to the VTV Purifi, one of the cleanest sounding amps I've heard, this time using the Revel M126BE. And for my test tracks, the H120 scores 3 out of 5 against the Purifi. The Purifi is even more neutral than the Hegel and loses out some personality in the process, and between the two, I'm having a bit more fun playing around with the Hegel. Purifi is still quite wonderful in the lower frequencies, and I would pick that for electronica and bass-intensive tracks. The Purifi has one of the most outstanding bass textures I've heard, and even against the Hegel, which is quite well known for great bass, it still stands out and does it a notch better. Being quite neutral though, it doesn't have a lot of volume and it's too bad you're not hearing those textures louder. But that's what tone controls are for, I guess. Mids are slightly thicker in the Hegel and the vocals also more forward, but while piano notes and vocals are leaner in the Purifi, they somewhat have a bit more detail. The Hegel is a bit sharper and has more sparkle in the highs, but the Purifi has more clarity. Talking about soundstage, the Hegel provides more depth and width, and while I can easily outline sounds with the Purifi, the Hegel is able to do this with more distance. Both are silent, but the Purifi is the more silent of the two. The Purifi is the more neutral, more accurate, more transparent amplifier between the two, although depending on your preferences, it might not be the most pleasant sounding. And let's face it, everyone wants a little bit more sparkle, and a little bit more oomph and punch. And this is what the Hegel gets right. It's mostly neutral and adds enough coloration to make it more satisfying. Still, the Purifi does 207 watts of power, 3 times more, and it's a lot cheaper. So if you don't mind getting that streamer, that AKM DAC, that EQ or DSP, that preamp, it could be a viable alternative if you can get that tone control right. Finally, let's see how the built-in DAC stacks against the Bluesound Node 2, using the Hegel as the amp, and again with the Revel M126BE. It's 3-4-5 in favor of the Hegel, losing out in trials and hamburgers, as I just found the louder bass of the Node 2 to be a bit more fun. So for rock and electronica, I would prefer the Node 2, and jazz, acoustics, and orchestra go to the Hegel. Let's break it down. The H120 has more textured bass, but as mentioned, there's a bit more bass volume in the Node 2, which makes it a bit more fun to listen to bass-intensive tracks, for me at least, where such details don't really matter or we're just sensitized. Mids are also richer and vocals slightly more forward in the Node 2, but again, textures are better in the Hegel. The Node 2 has some extra sparkle but really can't compare to the smooth and refined treble of the Hegel. And despite being rolled off later, the refinement doesn't sound tiring. The soundstage is slightly deeper in the Node 2, but only by a small amount and not enough to give that extra dimension in spacing between instruments. Separation is much easier heard in the Hegel with that super silence no doubt helping a big deal. The H120 is certainly a capable streamer and DAC, quite enough to forego getting that Bluesound Node 2, although it would still depend on your preference. Analytical listeners would be better suited to the cleaner, more neutral sound of the H120, while those wanting a warmer sound with richer vocals and louder bass, they'd be better suited to the Node 2. But again, as I mentioned, it doesn't make sense to get that Node 2 because the differences will not be worth it. Unless, of course, you'll be just using it as a streamer and you'd be getting a higher class DAC like a Chord Cutis or Yggdrasil or something higher. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, write them down below. See you in the next video.